Hello, species, value nature. Hello, New York game. Value nature system. We are inside of and as a value nature system that is perfect. That these are all tactically ulterior from. Life has an identity of relationship to space. We're inside of it the same way. The space inside English is value as nature, invisible but clear. The letters were discerned to show and to teach about identity nature as a natural volume, how we are of the Trinity is a science. For example, physics, metaphysics, and identity nature are three natures of volume. This as temporary slash lasting space nature. So now, what I'm trying to say, now I use names and things because I don't know these people's names. And they would say that, but at the same time, in the background, they'll say different things. That's why they forge names, switch names, and stick multiple fake police reports as evidence fabrications consciously to leave trails they're exploiting where they hide what is classified from these people and these from the people because we're made as nations individually grouped and together grouped tactically ulterior from how we were forced grouped by our species nature of volume and individuals in nature of volume automatically as a sex as a nature of volume automatically as a species at the same time as a nature of volume. This trinity is a demonstration of itself, of our value, how we are a quality of diffusion. Now, see, this is a quality of fact, treatment nature originally and still maintain, effectively maintain, not let free speech. Someone must teach. So I'm asking to have free speech counters to interbranch crime acts against me and against little kids, attaching me and little kids to fake locations. That's tied to them now, pretending I'm using all these names and things. In other words, I don't need to use names. The grammar school I went to when I was a kid was involved with database crimes, with mayors retired and standing, with all natures of interbranch family members retired and standing, and prison clicks through them, and all that juxtaposed with their family members, juxtaposed with foreign nations associated with our campuses, juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises with the areas, which is one thing. But they're sharing roles with the obfuscation of correlation nature and per a crime method. And I know this because that's the only reason I figured it out. It's the only way they could be doing it because I watched how they're, in other words, they're lying about me because in the background they already painted themselves into corners with criminal uses of databases. Now, what motivated that everyone to rolls with that is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated to me. This is how we have the overt criminal enterprises, private, and we have interbranch and collusion with a whole bunch of other nations, police and criminally involved with that too, and overt criminal enterprises, all filtered through what keeps each one rolls, needing to hide line progression for all different motivations, needing to defend fact, treatment, nature, value, conviction, value, worth that you can't defend, and not value precedents, criminally foreign influenced, fact, treatment, nature, styles of lying, originally and still. Our free speech in American history is about this organized crime method. These are Washington, D.C. tied, Trade Center attack tied, victim predators with themes of how they take their takes on justice. And for example, leaving this out, these crime methods through grammar schools, attaching people to fake locations and conversations and spreading those illusions through their classmates without everyone realizing. And then they're exploiting this because in the next grade you go 2 years, middle school. All exceptions where when people go to different types of schools, these are connected to it. On off the we're going to go for Cub Scouts and stuff. They have the sensibilities. They both beyond and while being having the sensibilities in the forest, for example, the value of every identity of position. They have it invested, relying upon types of experts for types of things. Boxings, originally and still, types of experts were used to further those things. They built identities of the ground relationships that they knew would be an identity of negative value nature progression relationship to the identity of value progression that is the invisible but still discernible identity that inventions work or not in relationship to, that they are further positive or not in relationship to the identity of relationship that all values have at once to each other, all identities of value progression. This is what science really reveals. And when you try to demonstrate this, when you try to speak it, you see offensively people have those kind of passions and emotions, dishonesty and delusions wrought that everyone's aware of, but not by accident too. Everyone's blaming the causes of it on other things, others than ourselves. The causes of that are maintained per an organized this organized crime method that was entrenched here originally, still knowing that it would make it. This is the spine of the integrity of the identity of negative value nature progression that modern nations were taking self-value to, because semi-ancients before them were taking self-value to it. Semi-ancients before the time of modern religion's messengers, thank God for them, they preserved science. Their identities and roles with it were still left through criminally foreign influenced sciences in every modern nation in semi-ancient times, already affected, even not even realizing it, because now the nations weren't valuing how we are individual, grouped, and species, nature, or volume simultaneously. They weren't valuing all the revelations that are within too, the value of sequence nature true, which is the first thing. So this is what I'm trying to talk about. There are people involved interbranch with child offenders, foreign and domestic medical offenders, undercover police formed roles with as doctors too. Delusions raw with triage relationships, right? With intermilitary, interbranch. These are people working privately with them, and originally and still exploiting the most their roles with the overt criminal enterprises, but also with the criminally foreign influence sciences and all these rules valued manifest and value nature positions that with the market's positions and things you can't value it and us and speak the value of the surface values of the Constitution simultaneously true at the same time. We have worse than recorded criminally foreign influence statutes manifest. Interbranch crime rackets, evidence rackets manifest. Manifest how valued, because everyone came through this child abuse method that makes people have fake conversations, puts fake things, sequence shift roles into database tied to the lies they're spreading through kids. Now these are adults with drugs through time, using their interbranch, because the identities of the branches individually, they were crime natures. Grouped, they were crime natures through other types of crimes now, and grouped, especially in sequence one way, the executive branch, simultaneously the judicial branch. Now this is where they're preventing free speech, unless you're going to entertain their roles with stacking all kinds of lies in sequence shifts, hid lie progressions hid by them faking more and more things. vaccines. So we have the same ones that are with this sickly distinctly in Wethersfield, Connecticut, as ones recorded sickly distinctly with it in West Hartford at the same time, as one sickly distinctly with it in Hartford, Connecticut through time, sickly distinctly with the different parts of Wethersfield, and sickly non-distinctly, and sickly non-distinctly and distinctly with the parts of Hartford as the ones interbranch from Wethersfield. We have Wethersfield, Hartford sharing where the line with the houses, businesses, and state prison offices. On off that, and on off the state judicial branch offices is involved with database crimes, identity thefts, and sequence shifts. And this is an organized crime method that is originally and still exploiting the nature of volume we are. See, I'm not going to use names now. See, because this is how to show the sequence shifts, because there is an identity locked on into and as the value of the ground. I'll gather around. The period is the point of real possession. To teach this about the simultaneously distinct and non-distinct relationship three natures of volume have simultaneously, distinctly, and non-distinctly onto one identity of value progression, invisible but so discernible. So even way beyond just how inventions work or not in relationship to it or not. Even way beyond how they're further positive or negative and not in relationship to it or not. This shows that us going to outer space is because we're in an identity of negative value nature progression, effectively breaching organized crime method maintained self-valued by the states and areas of each modern nation. As seven ancient nations have been locked into layers doing the same thing in relationship to the phenomenon of not the spine, but like the spine is manifest value relationship, manifest in demonstration of the complete nature of relationship to itself, where it has now, where it has and how that takes manifest and stays manifest value as what is stronger than all things of might together at once, and is more delicate than anything delicate, smaller than anything small, at once, at the same time. And that identity is instantaneously wherever it is. See, but its complete identity is not the bond of matter. So its complete identity is restricted. That's the value progression from matter. But it's simultaneously, distinctly, and non-distinctly as Earth's value progression. As temporary positive, temporary / lasting positive, only the extent of it is debatable. And not only that, to have recorded quality of fact shooting nature needed to counter the natures of criminal insidiousness nature, natures of positive that are not really positive always, and associated with exploitation of exceptions and of exception nature as fact treatment nature quality that stays as a nature of volume as criminal insidiousness nature with justifications of Hartford, Connecticut, with justifications of people stacking on mass scales, with justifications of natures of election crimes, roles that are worse than indifferent to what knew that it was going to keep states and areas knave conviction natures, premise treatment natures, sequence treatment nature, value treatment nature, and justifications of that, and then defenses of that so valued, maintained incapable of countering what effectively maintains each branch of government individual identities of law, grouped identities of law like the FBI, and all together. maintains each breach of government. States and areas criminally foreign influence delusions raw, and with the sciences from off the ground of education's value, because education's the ground of education's value is the identity that was before it, while being its identity, and while being the identity that is gaining through what it is now. Where we're even through us, it's a complete nature is restricted, but its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that is unrestricted. That is how it is discernible, but is discernibly now the cause length of Hades. For space nature transfer, value nature systems and stewards of them, incapable of defending themselves, and at the same time affording what needs to be said for themselves and everyone. Because no one because everyone's invested to these quality of fact treatment nature roles. So everyone's preventing mandated law. And what they're doing, how they're doing that is getting away with how they're using the grammar schools to hide life progressions from very interbranch individual, all kinds of crime natures, originally still victim predators, per the shared policing too. Shared nature ground relationship to our fact treatment nature quality. The ground has a relationship to the identity that owns every value from the bond to matter up to value one, as what made value one, and what made the value of zero a complete nature. Zero is just one nature of invisible but discernible, as three natures of volume are, by two other ones that in our range, and expanding as our identity from attached from before us as value, before us as a value degraded too. And see, that's self-value by value degraded now from that. And that's maintained though. And that's how it's exploited. Everyone missed because it's everyone's self-value roles, each age of fact treatment nature, blaming the real causes worse than this. Blaming the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, acts like predicate acts. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoing. American history, the history of modern nations about this organized crime method that came from semi-ancient times. This just reminds, within as the nature of quality of fact, human nature, formal, in collusion with private, overt criminal enterprises, formal meaning enter everything. Not just wars, but the insidious counters within as the value of ground relationships. We had obligations by correlation natures, reality, actual in relationship to our most critical questions, like why, how did we go into World War I? This is inseparable from how George Washington was forced to only be able to counter extort that with overt slavery with color left in New England, in the North, before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. This is inseparable from our obligations, also worse than forsaken, to have had them not understood. I forgot what. I don't want to make it too long now. But in other words, what subtracts or what adds is in relationship to what is only going to gain volume as value perfect. What goes negative is our value. And Leith of Hades, we're forced away from here. It will only stay the perfect science. See, free speech. WFSB is recorded and confessed involved with identity of the ground crimes against men and women. They're involved with child abuse crimes, with interstate drug clicks. These are also people who facilitated the crimes with Washington, D.C. Trade Center attack, trade center victims and workers, other nations' equivalents, roles with what our nation worse than originally, still worse than negotiated with, worse than terrorism, as the only identities of value that be misprisioning groups valuing, pretending they're against what they were are for. And that's with the exploitation, again, of types of experts being used and having been used originally and still to further the same things they're supposed to be against. And this is how everyone was facilitated to it, specifically to keep needed counters, needing to speak about this through other people. Now, to do it other ways, this is how we have to do it here. I'll talk about the identity. See, the identity of the ground is an identity of relationship to the identity that is forcing everything. Each person is constantly, unceasingly a gaining nature of volume. Even if we're losing weight, at the same time we're a gaining nature of temporary / lasting, positive or negative. Wherein on is now positive is a quality of positive as positive or negative, per another semi-nature that will only keep the difference between that as the relationship between it has and the complete identity of the perfect value progression. Allah's name is used to teach this. And with English, distinctly and non-distinctly, from the way the Quran is used to teach about it, no, right to left. English is using it, teaching about it left to right. That's why the L is the 11th letter. A through L are the alpha letters. L through W are the alpha and omega letters. And this is also yin yang. There are proofs that yin yang helped reveal, in other words, what's inside omega at this point, because this is left to right at once. This is how we are forever nature, but this is how we are temporary and lasting at the same time. This is about the identity that is always bigger than right to left, and is always bigger than left to right, no matter where we go. In other words, how many things come into space existence? It was bigger than them left to right and right to left since before them. So the 5 pillars of Islam, demonstrably inseparable from science, reveals that and how 5 semi-natures are inseparable from and as the value of one, but it's one also self-generating. And this is how we are forever nature, as a semi-nature, as a positive or negative relationship to itself, which is simultaneously distinctly and non-distinctly onto itself. That's why the period is both when it's both simultaneously, distinctly and non-distinctly a positive relationship to the rest of space nature. In other words, a sentence formed properly. A comma is in relationship to where a clause or where a word or a phrase, it's a word or a phrase. It's used in relationship to words or phrases, separating. A clause could stand, an independent clause could stand alone as a sentence. Claus, note that too. Santa Claus. A clause is a gaining nature of volume as value, as nature. All parts of English grammar are about value as nature of volume. Everything is a nature of volume of the nature of volume, and as value as the nature of volume's relationship to itself, which is positive or negative. But negative is a nature of positive. This keeps all. So this is why Islam. This is related to how Islam helped preserve algebra, helped lead. Christianity was stolen still because the campuses were stolen. So they were forcing everyone into the dark ages to fight with the Muslims. The Muslims won. That helped reveal the Renaissance, reveal a healthier relationship between tactically sickly made, tactically denatured human relations to maintain that self-value, because they knew if they maintained that self-value and everyone they can maintain the real causes of negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, self-value, blame to other things, others, and selves. They can maintain each standing position of each state and area of each modern nation, the phenomenon of what they made into modern nations, semi-ancient before that, perpetually reliant upon the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, nature, blame to other things, others, and selves. Standing life progression, cover up natures. Misprision reality. Misprision ties in relationship to the course that and why and how we have cells manifest body of value discernment with that pattern, with that trinity, the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. Them the cell wall shared. Not one has cared. See the three natures of invisible but still discernible nature of volume, natures of semi-natures of volume that we are, that is in our range. It is also demonstrably bonded with two other semi-natures of volume, and together that is bonded, and that bond is one identity, and that is identity nature itself. What all the parts of every body of everything shares is their complete identity. Each complete identity is unceasingly in a semi-nature relationship to the perfect value progression. And so this is why we have the predicate act associated with organized crime. See, but we have states and areas in collusion with overt criminal enterprises juxtaposed again, originally still. All victim predators valuing, having had, and still blaming the real causes of that and other things, others themselves. We have formal fact-cheaping nature rackets facilitated, but that doesn't make it right, and it leaves them manifest simultaneously needing simultaneously to have it blamed on other things, others themselves, not by accident. This is identity of the ground relationship so many ways. See, but we don't have free speech. We have WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, all the news in Connecticut recorded with the intelligence community involved with database crimes, pretending things recorded into databases after having had that facilitated illusions to make it look like they really, pretending that. In other words, we have standing original and still the identities of nations that are separate, like Russia and America. Where they're at peace in relationships, where they're crazy together, That piece is even sicker against our own, and they're against their own. For example, with psychology, sociology, training of all these bodies with rules that they're being used criminally. Statutes used criminally for sequence shifts, for example, styles. Pretending the law says this, but leaving out how they forging names, preventing free speech. You can't yell to force someone to listen to you in a court. They criminally make confessions and use time, lie about what you say. In other words, always too fast, too slow, forging names, switching names, falsified police reports, attaching little kids, their family members to fake locations, fake natures of relationships to people, fake relationships to people that weren't at all, like a Joshua Julian involved with them with Facebook crimes through time, with a whole bunch of people with Washington D.C. with the Trade Center, all facilitated to it. Then they want to have they're preventing mandated law because they need to pretend they don't understand things from the background. They're recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with crimes with the police and with evidence reception predators leading up to the Trade Center attack context from Connecticut to branch with it in Manhattan. Interstates with the perception of everything. This is used for a crime method that maintain roles with this intercities were connected, all that tied to people associated with acting departments, acting locations, people around Fox Connecticut News, involved with identity theft racket. That's what this is. One thing that is against everyone, but everyone's self-valuing it, is a whole bunch of methods of identity theft against others, against selves, because of time treatments. People don't have time to counter. This is let go when this is maintained roles where they keep the identity, all the identities of formal fact cheap in nature, juxtaposed, needed to hide the same lies, finite active sequence shifts, and identity natures of identity theft rackets roles self-value by overt criminal enterprises, by other nations' militaries, their police forms, all the private, all juxtaposed, hundreds of nations sick at once since ancient times. That's, for example, in relationship to correlation with the answer really is why the mass people stacking is. Pathology, even especially, you have to answer that question, you have to talk about how they made even the suburbs, different natures of them and stuff like that, all tactically denatured. Relationships to nature, forced relationships to value nature systems, again, built to keep everyone time, each position of time, in position upon in sustained ways, needing everyone to value time too fast, too slow, never letting herd, quality fact treatment nature. So everyone's missing how theater positive is being exploited everywhere. That's how they maintain states and areas criminally foreign influenced. This was sophistication before they had those little programs in the background. They had ropes programs and things like that. I think it's called CRT, whatever they call with all the programs tied to these various natures of courts. One-way reports, people on and off the state judicial branch offices, all natures of federal crimes with them. These are high predators. All natures of election crimes, criminal uses of everyone with FBI misprisioning criminality, knowing they're involved with election crimes and against the president. Sequence shift. This is right through administrations. These are crime acts roles with a whole bunch of federal criminals, and three of them and their family members associated with people associated with a cousin of a house in my area involved with a principal child offenders campus further, with more child offenders. Also with the policing of it, two Mendez police. Now, see, this is the same campus I went to when I was in grammar school. They're also with the Joshua Julian I never had anything to do with. He's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. He's online involved with a whole bunch of people with a line of natures of formal drug crimes, forging names, switching names, doctors that fake conversations with me. Their family members associated with crimes with the departments at the campuses, and three of them as and their kids involved is with this as with federal criminal code defendants, a former director of the FBI, whole bunch of FBI and CIA, and Weathersfield police, forging names, switching names, doing this interbranch. The branches, the Britain, a whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford Superior Court, other Hartford Probate Court. These are people who are sick with elderly, and the same one involved with child offenders, crimes with their patients and criminals with the campuses and kids in areas before they were caught, before they were with them. People associated with all the database clicks like fire departments, locations on off those little things, because then they value, you know, they need to hide their lie progressions. That's how they maintained and facilitated originally still criminally foreign influence. So they one thing they all communicated through other influences was that they're involved with sequence shifts. Interbranch, Connecticut, and the fake news is used to hide that from their criminal uses of databases through time. Overt criminal enterprises involved with recorded crime methods involving uses of confessions, uses of identity where they're trying to pretend they're about positive while they know they have verbal federal crime acts, evidence reception crimes with overt criminal enterprises, with private ones, with ones associated with all that private tied to the interbranches, with intercampuses database crimes. They're maintaining self-value. They're maintaining identity thefts, slanders of people, property thefts worse. Then these are people involved with this that are forging names, switching names, faking conversations as doctors with badges too. Crimes of various natures of courts and their family members at once, facilitated through uses of the ground, uses of them. This is a breaching organized crime method that you forced color in here specifically to maintain as one of the many tools to keep everyone maintained blaming the real, you know, blaming all that caused by the lack of sophistication with formal fact-cheating nature, the lack of real care by formal fact-cheating nature, the lack of real sequence shift revelations. We have sequence shift, we have identity theft racket rolls, interbranch. They pretend they have crime methods, pretend they don't understand people. That they only know in context that they couldn't be honest about. And that's recorded. And they're recorded hiding that by like people with these Mendez police, with the Kerr family, with Jerry Miller, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved crimes with judges, with child offenders, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated further crimes with a Phil Colloa, with people associated with body dumping spots criminally, with judges, retired and standing, with police forms of retired and standing with Weathersfield Police, with the Dillon family, people associated crimes with a serial killer, the person of them. These people recorded all the other natures of federal crimes with him, and with child offender principals campus further and further on off the middle school. There's a Zano family and recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by, I barely know them, and associated with cousins of theirs also that were facilitated to crime acts rolled with foreign and domestic, maintaining foreign maintaining this outcome, but it's maintained foreign there too. This is a method that keeps each modern nation hurt distinctly sickly, so they could effectively not even kings not discerning how to explain how sickly, non-distinctly everyone's hurt. That's why we're staying the same valuing since before cars, forced pathology of infrastructure, whereas now it's not overtly tactically denatured relationship to nature. It is that everywhere. Now, see, to admit that everywhere, we can bring reliefs everywhere. To admit that everywhere, we have to figure out what we're going to do where reliefs are needed most, where there are shootings. Now, see, but this is, for example, but the people involved with those shootings are also the ones involved with interbranch criminality, with the overt criminal enterprises, and with all that relationship to that, and all private to them rackets together. Sick, fake. These are Washington D.C. Trade Center, fact cheap in nature, volume, values that are only positive in relationship to wars, not by accident. And then so when we have pseudo morality, we have quality of fact sheet, we have the identity is the grounds, relationship to what divides or multiplies, relationship to what adds or subtracts. As quality of fact should be nature, as forever nature, as positive or negative course. The forever nature, infinity is a gaining nature of volume. Vaccines, it tells us things.